Straight Line is brought to you in part by the Toledo Clinic ENT, specializing in allergy, nasal, and sinus care.
You're watching Straight Line with Dan Rogers, President and CEO of Cherry Street Mission Ministries.
Welcome to Straight Line. My name is Delray Bush. Dan, today we're talking about something that, impacts so many guests at Cherry Street, almost all of them, if you're in the homelessness, poverty. And I know that is something that is personal for you. How so?
Well, it's personal for me because I grew up, my siblings and I, in generational poverty. We can unpack that this morning because it's just, it's a very real thing and a very personal thing, and one of the things that drives my everyday work.
Absolutely. And that impacts you as young as, school age. I mean, that makes a huge impact in your whole upbringing, your whole life. How did that do that for you?
Well, it's interesting because, when I was in grade school in the early 70s, school lunches were really predominant, as was the beginning of school breakfast. And you could go to school early and get a breakfast. Now, it wasn't open to everyone, because the meal programs in the school systems have really enlarged drastically now in the 21st century. But back in the early 60s, it was very specific. You had to show up early, you had to show up on time, you had to stand in a line, and it was really predominant that you were the poor kid, who was there to get the breakfast. But it was the best way that our school could figure it out. And
at that young of an age, you're labeled poor. I mean, at the age of what, 5, 6, 7?
I remember kids, saying that, but I also don't really remember taking it too much to heart either. It was what it was. I wasn't. My family didn't act poor. My parents worked very, very hard, we never really acted or behaved poor. I'm not entirely sure I even knew I was poor until I became an adult and really looked back on it, and am still marveled at the poverty and the generationalness of my poverty when I was growing up.
I hear you say generational poverty. What kind of poverty is there? It seems like there's types, generational, the first time someone's ever been in poverty. And how do we get out of it once we're there?
Well, you're so right. There is like occasional poverty, right? Where you have a big expense, right? And you've really got to tighten down for 6 months or a year or a week. For those days, you're experiencing poverty. You simply don't have the spendable income to dispose. There are certainly, so that's like environmental or situational poverty. There's also first generation poverty. First generation poverty is my parents didn't experience poverty, my grandparents didn't experience poverty, but because of whatever reason, my wife and I am experiencing for the first time in my generation's poverty. Now that happens because perhaps I got involved in gambling or got involved in some scheme that got me in trouble, or it's entirely possible that I lost my job, and now that job has become, that joblessness has become chronic, and now it's over weeks and periods of time.
And what's that look like in getting out? How hard is it to get out of that poverty once you're there?
Well, first generational poverty is easier to get out of, and I use that word so carefully because nothing's easy, particularly when it comes to the way that poverty affects a family. But you have a better chance, I should say, of getting out of first generational poverty because of the generations around you. Mom, dad, grandparents, aunts, uncles, brothers, and sisters aren't experiencing poverty the way you're experiencing poverty, and so your support systems are in better shape, right? They're more able to assist you, more able to support you, help you perhaps even move in with them until you get on your feet and you can move on. So first generational poverty doesn't have to slip into generational poverty, and in most cases it does not.
Sure. I think the interesting thing to think about there is when we're talking about multi-generational poverty, wow, how hard that would be to, I think of our guests who, I can't move in with my mom or dad because they're in public housing and have to have a number on how many people can stay there.
Correct.
Or, there's just a situation where no one can help you.
Right.
And that's hard.
Well, you know, you have to come up with the family members. You know, this is why gangs and roving demographics of people, whether you call them gangs or not, are associating with each other. They're more associates, really, than the organized gang that we want to just label groups of people into. And I'm not to say that there aren't gangs. Clearly, there are organized crime, organized gangs within the community, for sure. But not every gathering group of people that are going through the same thing at the same time is necessarily a gang, but they are associating with each other because the lack of family support is there. But Delray, multi-generational poverty means that there is no person that I can see or anyone could have seen in my family line that didn't experience life exactly the way that I'm experiencing it.
Well, I think it's interesting. I hear you talk about gangs and, you know, the willingness to get into a gang because there is a support network there.
Yeah.
You know, you need money, you need
Yeah.
a place to stay. It's there from speaking to individuals who've been in them.
Well, and you know, those things don't need literacy. They don't need an application. There's no membership dues or membership fees. There's no annual fee. You know, so I can join those huddles or those groups of people quite easily. And of course, there is a price to admission. Perhaps I've got to join in the ideology, or I have to join in the context of the culture of that gang or that group of people. But either way, I have become resourceful in the way that poverty is affecting me and the way that hunger oftentimes, or even a future, the lack of it, is driving now my decisions in real dynamic ways.
I think something that worth talking about is individuals who have felonies. To get out of poverty for an individual who has a felony is extremely hard. A lot of people will not hire felons. You know, and there are many industries where that is a good thing. You know, in a school, things like that. It might not be a great idea to have a felony.
Yeah, it doesn't mean the rule is negative, but yeah, sometimes those rules are important.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's to see a lot of our guests struggle with that. Well, I have a felony.
Right.
I can't get a job here, here, and here. And having to go through the job market, and there's a small pool in which do hire felons.
Yeah.
So that's
You know,
hard.
it's an interesting thing to work with people, you know, because on one hand, you have to you need to help people quickly adjust to where they are in homelessness and poverty, and help them see and help them build platforms so they can see something different, while at the same time helping them reconcile their past. So there's this constancy of almost the metaphor of driving a car, where looking in the rearview mirror at your past continually is probably not a good idea because you are actually going forward. But so you need to look through the windshield, you need to look towards your future, but you also can't take your eyes off of what is following you. And so that metaphor of driving a car is critical in helping people get out of generational poverty or see themselves as the new generation, as was in my case, where poverty no longer has to follow you into your children's lives.
Well, I think something you said that was interesting there is looking in the rearview mirror all the time.
Right.
I know individuals, you know, as friends that are always budgeting very consciously. They finish your plate, you know, don't leave any scraps. Let's figure out what we can do with the leftovers, which is great, but it's often because of their upbringing and because they never had enough. So, you know, when they do, they make sure to use all of it, which is a great thing, but, you know, it's one of those things that's built into you forever.
Yeah. Well, you're absolutely right. Let me tell you that why this is so personal to me, even deeper, is because of my deep love and respect for the institution of the church. Because the church really is designed to reverse and end things like generational poverty in people's lives. Oftentimes, though, unfortunately, the way we're going about ending poverty in families' lives is through the handout, is through service. And I put that in air quotes very carefully, Delray, because I don't want to discourage the church who is watching to not be involved in service, because it is a great place to get started serving your community. But if you want to end things and if you want to reverse trends within community, you're going to have to start giving not out of your wallet, not out of your resources, but out of your heart.
Absolutely. Also, something that's also really important to me is understanding that the individual on the other side who is in poverty still has something to offer. There's an exchange there that can take place, right?
Well, no question about it. As a matter of fact, we went back to South Toledo and talked to Pastor Josh Hester. He and his wife Joy pastor the Vision Ministries in South Toledo. We talked to them earlier in the year, and he's back via video to talk to us about generational poverty, because he's now pastoring in a community very, very much like he grew up in, and he's got an interesting take on how we can develop relationships with people in the context of generational poverty. Let's tune in right now and hear what Josh has to say on this topic.
As a person that was raised in poverty and then now also a person who serves in poverty, I would say definitely one of the greatest challenges that I've had to face is just not having moral absolutes. Being raised in poverty, I wasn't raised that selling drugs was bad, that stealing was bad, those type of things. And so when you're raised in an environment where there's no absolute authority, there's no absolute moral code, it sets up for a whole society of individuals who wrong is right and right is wrong, and so good is bad and bad is good. And when you have a whole society of people like that, it makes for a hard transition to say, hey, look, this is wrong. And as a minister of the gospel, when you start preaching truth, and I remember the first time I heard, hey, sex outside of marriage was wrong, and this was wrong, and this was absolute news to me for the first time. When you don't have any of that, that being taught to you, when you don't have people to show you how to live life, those are definitely some difficult challenges because then what happens is you become a product, or you become a statistic of just what everybody else is doing. Everybody else that I grew up smoked weed. We all, we hung out, we did drugs, all that stuff. And so when you don't have that makes it difficult to, how do you change a society if you're not influencing morality? How can you change the way people think if you're not changing the heart? One of my greatest things that I believe that is if the heart of a man changes, the man changes. So if you can change the inner man of a person, and obviously I'm, in the ministry aspect, and the only thing that I found out that works out is Jesus. When that changes, then everything can change. The way people, they live life, the way that they treat their family, the wanting to have a work ethic, all those things change. And so in order to do that, you got to have people who are influencing. You got to have what we would call, fathers and mothers, spiritual people who are involved in saying and reaching out to young people and saying, hey, look, hey, let's do something different. Let's get off the streets, And so that's probably what I would say is definitely one of the most difficult things. And then on top of that, when you have people that change, it makes it real difficult when you have a history. I work with a lot of young men, and when they've got a huge list of things that they've done wrong, and then they want to get right, and they want to work a job, they want to take care of their family, and it's hard for them to get back involved in society because when you got felonies, you can't even work at McDonald's, or you've got a long history of criminal offenses. You can't even work a job doing this or doing that. And so I found a lot of guys that we have poured into, they find themselves back on the streets again because just they give their lives to Christ, they turn around, but yet there's a drive in them to want to do what's right. But I can't get a job, I can't fit in, and so I'm going to go back to doing what I know how to do. I know how to sell drugs, so I'm going to get back out here and do it again. Or the lady who she wants to get off the street, and she's been prostituting, and I gave my life to Christ, and man, I want to get off drugs, and yet 2 weeks later she's back on there again because of just not having that structure. And so those are some very difficult challenges that we face personally, and as a minister of the gospel for almost 16 years now, it's definitely one of the difficult things that I found difficult in the ministry that we do and where we're at and stuff.
It's wonderful to hear how much Josh loves people, loves the church, and loves our community.
Well, his T-shirt says it all, right?
Exactly. He has so much passion for people, and he's in the perfect position to do that right in South Toledo, right here. I think it's amazing to see how the church can really impact people and how they can, cover them in love, especially the family unit. Wouldn't you agree?
No question. This show is called Straight Line because the church is that straight line. According to the gospel of redemption, the church is really designed in its makeup through the gospel of redemption to be the shortest distance between problems and solutions. And that's really what the gospel does. Now, we're not talking about length of line. We're just talking about the straightest line possible. So it really doesn't matter how long it takes me to get out of addiction or how long it takes me to recover from poverty or once I'm in poverty. or how to change my life generationally so that my kids experience a different lifestyle or a different life hope. It just means that the church is designed to provide the straightest path possible from problems to solutions. And when we can do that, we can reverse trends in neighborhoods and in whole cities.
I think the hardest part about this topic is that it's slow. It takes a long while. I know
Yeah,
me.
that's it.
I mean, in our society, we like
That's
we
exactly
like
it.
fast. We like
Yeah.
it to like. Why can't this be over? Why can't we get better? So
Yeah.
you know, we give money, which of course a lot of organizations need, and we give all these things. But you know, time. That's what we really need to be giving.
Well, and I would take it a step further and say we need timelessness. You know, we actually need to drain time out of the equation, but you really hit it right on the head. We are really addicted, and I mean the church is really addicted to, you know, fast fixes. And, you know, hunger can be solved with a meal, and we know that's true. If someone's hungry, read the book of James. If someone's hungry, let's feed them. If they're alone, let's befriend them. If they're naked, let's clothe them. Man, we can do that all day long, and I'm great and happy to do it, and am so satisfied when I see the church rising up and meeting human need within their community. But even the church know, Del Rey, that that sandwich given only solves hunger for that meal. No meal, no matter how fantastic we think it was, transforms lives and transforms communities. So obviously we need a longer approach and a straighter line out of poverty than we presently have.
We often hear the saying, "Teach a man to fish." What do you think of that?
I hate it, man. I hate that saying. You know, give a man a fish he eats today, and teach a man a fish he eats for a lifetime. I hate that because nobody addresses the body of water, or that phrase or that axiom doesn't address the body of water, and the body of water has to be addressed because I can teach Del Rey how to fish. But if Del Rey doesn't know where the water is, doesn't have access to the water, doesn't have water ownership, maybe there's a big 10-foot electrified fence around the water, then what have I really done? I guarantee you in a day's time, I will be back to giving you a fish.
I think something that to relate that is, you know, we talk about rapid rehousing, things like that.
Right.
We see, you know, a person gets a house. They still have issues with budgeting. They still have issues, maybe being around the wrong crowd of people with drug abuse, things like that,
Right.
bad relationships. They don't know how to get on the bus because, you know, there is no grocery stores that large downtown. So they have to figure out how to get groceries.
Yes.
They have to go here, there, and everywhere. How do I get a license? Things like
Right.
that. So if they don't have those basic know-hows, you can't function in our society.
That's correct. You know, I left my house when I was 18, when I graduated and moved out. You know that we said in this show I grew up in generational poverty. And it took all of nearly 15 years until I was well into my 30s before I began seeing a reversal of the effect. And that was lots of help. That was people loving me, caring for me, holding me accountable, giving me the truth, and giving me love at the same time. I wish it was 13 to 15 minutes. It wasn't. It was 13 to 15 years before I saw a reversal of poverty as a trend in my life. And you know who it was, Del Rey? It wasn't education, although I had it. It wasn't a sandwich, although I had that. It was the church. The church reached deep into my life at critical points, stood with me, held me accountable, loved me, visited me, all the things the Bible says we need to do when we're reaching people. And that right there, that drives my every waking minute and my passion, not only to be in a community where we can reverse poverty, but my passion to be a part of a faith community that holistically understands that this is going to take a minute. We're going to have a longer solution, a longer look, and stand in a longer line in order to serve people.
Was there a specific time when you said, you had like this aha moment, and you said, I'm here. I'm where I never thought I'd be. I'm out of poverty. Was there a
Yeah,
moment?
I think it was yesterday. You know, I mean, honestly, I don't know that you know, poverty really does a number on you. You know, still that framework, again, covered by the blood of Jesus Christ long ago, but that framework is still inside of my psyche. You know, I mean, I could be a hoarder if I wanted to be. I mean, I believe I could hoard like that. You know, if I really let myself go.
And we see that a lot in our work.
We do. You know, poverty is used to not having, and so every time we have, we gather as much as we can because there is no rainy day fund. Every day is a rainy day. So I think, you know, every day God just heals me deeper and heals me better relative to that aha moment. But I can tell you this, my kids and now my grandchildren have never had that aha moment because through the reversal of that trend, God has redeemed now my next generation. And that's, wow, that's everything.
And that's that wraparound support that they have. I mean, that's the key to, you know, getting out of poverty. When
right.
you don't have a family member that you can go to and say, hey, I'm in a tight spot. I
Yeah.
mean, because we've all had them. We've all had them. I remember being in college and calling mom, oh, I might have bounced a check, you know,
Right.
having those talks as you learn. But when you are in that learning process
Yeah.
and there's nowhere to go, that's scary.
Well, yeah, go back to what Josh said. You know, Josh painted the picture so well. You know, everyone in his neighborhood smoked dope, ran around, didn't have a job, and what is a young man in that neighborhood to do but to experience the same thing everyone is experiencing? That same pastor just a few moments ago also said that it was the church who became a mom, became a dad, became, and the necessity for the church today to not replace mom and dad, but to figure out how to also heal mom and dad so that families can begin to turn around and communities can follow.
Yeah, relying on our Heavenly Father is key in those situations.
No question.
And praying and getting into His Word and understanding who you are through Him. And that's an amazing feeling.
It is. It is. So, you know, as you're watching today's show, you know, you're probably thinking, you know, what, Delray, they got to be thinking, right? Like, how can I help somebody? I've never experienced generational poverty. I'm used to putting $1 out the window and addressing poverty that way, or I'm used to, you know, working through local organizations like Cherry Street, you know, to address poverty, and all of that is greatly needed and appreciated. But, you know, Delray, you didn't experience generational poverty growing up. How do you, let me turn the tables back on you for a quick second, and just in our last few moments, how do you, not having had experienced generational poverty, keep it straight as now you are assigned to work within impoverished neighborhoods?
I think the key is understanding people as a whole and their behavior. So understanding if you never had anything, why do you hoard? And you know, when you have this access to toilet paper, why do you steal it all out of the stalls? And not in having the courage through God to address those issues as they come about, because I have gotten it thrown back. Well, you're this way and you've probably never experienced that. I might not be able or have had the experience, but I can help you. I can still help.
That's good.
No matter where you are, you can help. You might need a little training, things like that. And it's always good to learn about those kind of issues anyway, because I guarantee that everyone in their lives knows someone in some sort of poverty.
Well, there you go, folks. You just heard it from Delray Bush. You know, you support Delray because she's a member of our team at Cherry Street. And through your support, you help her stand in the gap and watch how people can change their lives. Take a quick minute and see how you do that every day at Cherry Street. You know, Cherry Street Mission Ministries from 1947 until this very day has always been about people. People like you. People that come through our doors for a wide range of reasons. So when you financially and prayerfully support Cherry Street, you are actually making an investment in life revitalization. And I think one of the cool things about that is we're all about revitalizing and transforming every life that comes through one of our doors, no matter what the reason. That's the great thing about your support and your investment of Cherry Street, is the way that lives are transformed and changed. You know, Del Rey, this is obviously a big topic for us at Cherry Street because it's a big topic in our communities. As you and I were just discussing poverty, we're listening to Pastor Josh from Vision Ministries. What did you learn today? I mean, maybe even be in the place of a viewer today. What do you believe our viewers learned today from our broadcast?
I think it's key to understand the behaviors of poverty and how we're not just lazy, how we're not just you know, doing it because we just want to. Maybe you don't know better. Maybe you saw your mom and dad do this. Maybe you know, that prostitute had a mom who was a prostitute and she's trying to support her kids just like her mom did.
Yeah.
So it's important to understand that people are complicated. Everyone has a different reason for being in poverty and, you know, of course, being at Cherry Street Mission Ministries as well.
Yeah, no question. You know, as you were looking at today's program and you are hearing Del Rey, you know, Del Rey, you face this every day. You know, as we said in the broadcast, you know, you stand in the gap and you help people see a different dynamic for their life through education. And as you see that, this is what you do. This is who you support. You support tons of people just like Del Rey through volunteerism, through your prayerful support, and certainly the way that you financially support the work of your local mission field, Cherry Street Mission Ministries. Did you know that just for $104, you can sponsor 2 full days of full support for our guests? What a tremendous gift that is, particularly as we walk ourselves through the end of the year. Think about how many ways you can dynamically change a person's life through such a simple way of a gift of $104. Do you know that that includes not just the food, the clothing, and shelter, not just those basic human needs? We'll do that all day long on your behalf, and in most cases we'll do it with you. But that also includes recovery and redemption. It also includes our many chaplains. It includes education and what Del Rey does. And now it's including vocational training as we begin to really bring the Life Revitalization Center to bear on changing whole communities through the power of the gospel of redemption. And that's what you do. That's what happens when you decide, I'm going to get involved in my local mission field. So go to your room, put your passport back, don't call your travel agent and get an overseas ticket, although those are fun and cool things to do. But come on down, get in your car or walk down the block and watch how you can physically get involved in changing a life at Cherry Street Mission Ministries. You know, Del Rey, you and I often say our lives were changed at Cherry Street. I know that's true for you.
Absolutely, it really is. Without Cherry Street, I wouldn't be where I am today here on set.
No question.
No.
There's no question. And we're so glad that God changed your life at Cherry Street.
Absolutely. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.